Hi, Drew.
Hi, Christine.
So tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Drew Schmitz. I'm the executive director with a startup that provides remote chaplain care to organizations across the United States. Our company's called Little Cloak, and it really is something that came from the heart of really wanting to care better for people. A lot of people get kind of stuck on the name, trying to figure out what that means. Little Cloak is um, actually stems from a story. A guy a couple hundred years ago named Saint Martin of Tours was a soldier. He's coming home from battle, and he sees in the snow an individual who's not going to last the night, and so he actually gets down off his horse. He tears his cloak in half, gives half of his cloak to this person on the side of the road. And that night, he actually has a dream. He sees Jesus, and Jesus is actually wearing the other half of his cloak, and he takes this as a sign that he's going to go, he wants to do something different with his life. And so he goes to the king and he tells the king, I'm not fighting battles anymore. I'm going to go help the poor, and I'm going to care for people. And he gets this nickname, and the nickname is Little Cloak. And in Latin, when we get this idea of little cloak or little cape, it's actually where we get this word chaplain from. And so we developed an organization that's trying to make it as easy and simple as possible for every individual to access care. And so, kind of this resonates a ton with my background as over 25 years of being a pastor and caring for people within the church, and now bringing that into the marketplace. And really, our goal is to walk with people and show them hope. And so that's what we're trying to do. I'm a husband. Been married for over 23 years. I'm a father of three amazing kiddos and living right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, and loving the warm weather here.
That's so neat to hear that backstory about the name. I did wonder about it, but what I was imagining was a cloak being something that a sojourner or like a pilgrim wears, and the role of a chaplain coming alongside somebody in that journey. It was immediately evocative to me. So that's interesting to hear where that came from.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of the image that we're trying to do, Christine, of trying to get down and meet people with where they're at and care for them in that space. I think that a lot of the programs that are out there are these realities of people, come find us, come to us, and then we'll care for you. But for us to enter into the workplace and to be able to connect with people, like I said earlier, we're 100% virtual, so it's a space, especially amongst the next generation, that they're very, very natural connecting in that space. And obviously it makes it, extremely confidential. It also gives that sense of I can connect with you on my schedule and on my time as well. There's some of the benefits there that we're finding to that, especially with a lot of companies heading to remote and hybrid kind of work. So
How did you move from the position of being a pastor to being in this role of entering the workplace?
yeah. Um, uh, I think first and foremost, the kind of the backstory between that transition from, being a lead pastor for almost 10 years, an assistant pastor for about 10 years before that, really came to the Lord guiding and directing that in some really, really practical ways. I would tell you, number one, a part of it was a big transition that our family just needed. Some of my backstory is our youngest kiddo is had some pretty significant special needs, and some of the disabilities that he had. Once we were able to identify what was going on for him, recognizing we needed to get to a place that had some of the care that he needed, and so that required a transition for our family. Secondly, like there's just some places where, just frankly, I was facing burnout as a pastor. We came to a situation, circumstances that was really recognizing I need to change some things, and we need to get into a space. And over the last, it's been just a couple years now, still in this journey of building that and trying to and on not so many different things, but finding ourselves in a place of really my wife and I and our kiddos some really, really powerful healing and some senses and awareness uh, uh, of the purpose that I think God has for us and all of that. And so really what's happened is the Lord just knit together a very, very surprising story for us, and moving I was pastoring in Chicago for a long time. I pastored in Phoenix for a number of years, and then a cross country move here to Charlotte to start up something brand new that I never would have expected. And it was a really hard transition for myself and for our family. Obviously, picking up our roots there in Phoenix and moving across the country, that was a tough transition. And so wrestling through that, a very very new thing. I really have not worked in the marketplace in any real way. Ministry was my background, so if when I kind of stepped into this and started looking at what opportunities were there, I felt like my resume was very very one dimensional, and just wrestling through, okay, what does this look like? What is this next season? Because I still felt that sense of wanting to care for people, wanting to help people, but unsure of what that looked like exactly outside of the church. And as the Lord brought this opportunity with Little Cloak and being able to kind of take this to the next level, I saw how much more opportunity there is. And even I would say, Christine, um, just finding and discovering how much the Lord is doing in the workplace and in not as opposed to the church, but as an extension of the church in some really, really real and tangible ways.
Yeah, I hear that for sure. Along those lines, in the work that you do, what is the biggest problem or issue that you keep seeing come up over and over again?
I think it's really a practical issue, Christine. That the biggest issue that keeps coming up again and again in our conversations is the number of people who don't have anyone to talk to when life is tough. When life's hard, where do I go to talk to someone about what I'm facing and what I'm dealing with and the questions? And that's not just issues of, I'm dealing with anxiety or depression, so, really, sometimes real mental health issues, but it's also just like I'm facing an employment decision. I'm facing like I want to move up in my career. I'm trying to decide whether to go back to school. My family situation, some of them are very very positive kind of situations, but people don't know who do I talk to about that, and someone I trust, someone that's safe, um, someone that actually is like going to care for me and want to understand that. And just the really, I think this is at the root of so many issues out there is people don't know where to kind of bring that questions and bring the even some of the doubt and some of the wrestlings that they're having, or relationship issues, or some of those pieces where they're like, I have this burden on my heart, I don't know where to talk to them, who to talk to about this. And so creating a space where people feel like I can reach out to you, I can talk to you about this, I can figure some of these things out, and you're going to help me walk like through a transition season or into that next season.
That's heartening to hear that you guys can provide that role.
Yeah.
How did you first hear about my purpose plan?
My first introduction actually was through Brian, who's one of your team members there. We connected here in some of the business networking groups that are in the Charlotte area, and so he I connected, and so my connection with my purpose plan came through an introduction through other followers of Jesus that are in this area, caring for people, and seeing the connection between what we're doing in just that front line of caring for people, and seeing the direction that my purpose plan is developing. Um, and so grabbed a coffee one day. Brian pulled out that app and just kind of showed me what the team was building, and seeing the connection with a lot of what I was learning, as well as so much of my experience background of ministry, and recognizing the tool that was there that you guys were developing, and how influential that could be in the workplace.
Yeah, what in particular stood out to you about it, if you can remember your initial impression?
Yeah, I think the connection was, you know, the thing that jumped out the most to me was really a lot that I was already learning within a transition from ministry into the workplace and understanding how to run a startup, how to oversee so many of the different pieces with multiple individuals on the team and managing people and just juggling a lot of those things. We started to build some systems and some processes in that. And then at the same time, we were embedding ourselves within organizations. And so part of our business model is a partnership with companies that are anywhere from, one or two individuals to thousands of employees, and recognizing that some of the conversations and many of the conversations that we're having with those individuals, it revolves around this idea of understanding your purpose. And so seeing this, and the thing that jumped out right away was seeing this as a resource, as a tool that we can utilize within our partnerships you're always looking for tools that you can put in your tool belt to be able to pull out for those conversations, those interactions that kind of help walk people through a process. Our times, a lot of times, as a chaplain organization, typically we're meeting with people for about an hour, and there's only so much you can accomplish typically in about an hour. And so you're trying to find those tools that work in between and continue to develop some of those processes. And I think one of the things especially we're seeing amongst a lot of the clients that are reaching out to us is a lack of purpose, and there's a longing for purpose, but there's a ton of distractions. I think there's a lack of even clear boundaries, but part of it's just reality, Christine, is many of them just don't even know where they're going. And so to be able to say, point to a tool and say, check this out. Um, this is going to give you some resources and develop some things that by the time the next time we sit down and connect, the next time we get on camera and meet together, you're going to have some greater clarity and we can continue to develop that. And it becomes almost like a companion with what our care is trying to provide.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me too. Um, so it sounds like you addressed some of these other questions that I had about whether this meets a need out there, or something that maybe the employee. I right now the trend has been that employers recognize that they need to show care for their employees, and that they would like to. A lot of these purpose driven businesses that we talk to, the leaders are just so passionate about not just their organization mission, but developing their people and really making sure that they feel seen and heard. And so they're doing a lot. There is a lot of vendors out there and a lot of other software and company apps that provide this employee benefit. How do you think, and you touched on this a little bit, but how do you think that this is distinct from some other ways that employers can show employees that they care about them?
I think the distinction with my purpose plan from other programs that are out there and some other tools that are even out there is twofold. Number one, I think it's the unique connection to a faith-based blueprint. And so that the reality that the purpose isn't something that you're trying to make up from scratch, that there's this belief and underlying reality, especially amongst business owners who are coming from a faith-based perspective, and whether they're faith influenced or whatever, but they also have this idea that there's this woven in reality into who we are. And so we're not trying to just like throw words against the wall and see what sticks. There's actually this reality that I'm trying to discover this mix of strengths and experiences and personalities that really we believe God has created within us, and the way that He knit us together. I think of Psalm 139. This I praise you because I am fearfully, I'm wonderfully made, and so I'm understanding the way that I'm made, and I'm discovering my purpose from that reality. And I think my purpose plan has developed a tool, a resource that is established on that, and whether or not that individual is coming from a faith-based perspective, or they're even looking for something that's faith influenced, that underlying foundation remains, and there's a truth to it. I think the other side to it of what makes it such a helpful resource is it tries to bring purpose into everyday rhythms. And this is the disconnect I see with a lot of organizations that we even partner with, and even organizations we interact with, is there's a ton of talk about culture. There's a ton of talk about purpose. There's a ton of talk about identity, and all of these really, I think, important concepts. But what does that actually look like in day-to-day rhythm of a company? And that's where I'm finding how many purpose statements are completely useless if they just sit in your, you know, company playbook or your corporate poster that you put up. And it only really changes a person's life when you start to break it down into some really small, simple habits that actually influence not just your individual goals, but also how they start to tie into some of your organizational goals. And so I think that this aligns so well with what my first plan is developing, um, that there's a philosophy there about bringing all of this together in one place that spurs on this thought process as well as some conversations that make it. And the word I think of is, it just makes it practical.
Yeah, that's really well said. I couldn't have said that better myself. I was talking about it. All right, so the last question I have for you is, what is something that gives you hope these days?
I think the thing that gives me the most hope is the willingness of more and more, especially the next generation of employees and teammates that are coming up, their willingness to talk about stuff. That I think that there, for a long time, there has been a dissection of our lives. And so the Drew that shows up to the office is one person, and then I got to get in my car, and when I go home I get to be a different person. And that reality, to separate those things and to treat those as separate, is really a dangerous reality. That, I was taught this, Christine, just in my early days of, entering into, my first full-time position in ministry, and this idea of, you go in, you deal with the stuff, you get your work done, and then on the way home you kind of have to pack all that stuff up, and you got to throw it over the bridge, and you'll find it, the next day when you come driving back. And there's something really, really, um, it's really damaging about that idea. And there's this now permission that's starting to grow to bring your whole self to work. And that and that what we want is, I want purpose. I want understand my calling. I want to see that my daily tasks matter, not just in a work environment, but in all of life in so many ways. And I think that this is a place of addressing burnout is real. And when I have to try to create this disconnect, I feel like that actually creates so much of the burnout that's happening. And so sharing how I'm, developing some personal purposes, and how that aligns with some of the company's purposes that are there, and seeing those organizational goals come together, it becomes more sustainable. It becomes more, enjoyable. And so really, this is the thing I'm so excited about, is that there's a willingness and readiness to bring our whole selves in, and to want to be our whole selves. Now, you can take that too far, and so we got to be really, really cautious about this reality of, I only going to do a job that is, completely fulfilling, and it has to check all the boxes off. And so you don't want to become over idealistic in it. But at the same time, there's a readiness to bring, my mental health, my emotional health, my physical health, and as well my spiritual health. They all affect my ability to do the work that I do. And so just an acknowledging of that by more and more organizations, and a readiness to accept that and say, hey, we're going to resource our employees towards that as well, rather than just a token. Here's an EAP. Hopefully, it covers the things you need. Don't tell us what's going on over there. If you need a physical health thing, if you need a mental health, you need emotional health, go jump over the fence, take care of that. When you're fixed, jump back over, and we'll get back to work. That separation is start slowly breaking down. And I think more and more, especially leaders, are starting to be honest about their whole self and how they're working on their whole self. And so that's encouraging for me going forward.
And that makes me hopeful to hear that. Yeah, that's great. All right. That is the last of the questions I have. Thank you so much, Drew.
So very, very well.